A lot of people say that I have an eye for detail. He said that I have an ear for detail.
So what do you do when you just have 650 words and so much about yourself that you want to encapsulate? I was floored. I'd never been floored in this manner by a teenager before.
Just do you and tell your story and speak your truth. That's all you really can do, and the right person will read it and it will strike a chord with them. The right person at the right university will say that is the kid who belongs on our campus and our community. Hello everyone, welcome to our first installment of the series with the College Essay Girls. Joining us today are two seasoned veterans of the college admissions essay process, Megha and Annie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. All three of us have spent years honing and refining the art of the college admissions essay, thinking deeply about what wows admissions officers. We've worked with students to get into the likes of Stanford and Princeton and Yale and Brown and Oxford and practically any top college you can think of. And throughout our journeys, we have found some really key insights that we feel like will really help. So join us as we pull back the curtain on the college admissions essay and pull out some of our favorites.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, so what have been some of our favorite, most fun, most exciting essays to work on? Megha, would love to hear from you.
There have been many this year. I think one that particularly stands out to me is what we like to call a relocation essay here at Athena. At first, when I was talking to the kid about the essay, it sounded very generic. He was really bright, really smart, very eager to begin this process. So I asked him his story, his journey, which is essentially the first question you ask your scholars. He told me that he had lived in Texas, in Houston. Then after that, he moved to Paris and then Dubai, where they're finally settled now. So that's the story he wanted to tell. He also had a very distinct brand that he was very passionate about, which was also his capstone project. So he wanted to weave that in the essay. This brand also represented his overall philosophy, his overall approach towards life. And I was like, okay, let's see how we can weave this in. So he gave me a first draft, which just read like a very stock standard, generic essay about moving from one country to another. And I told him, look, you're a great writer, this is amazing, but we need something more. We need more pizzazz, and we need something that makes this essay stand out. And he very clearly said one line that was it for me, which was, a lot of people say that I have an eye for detail. He said that I have an ear for detail. And that's it. That became our entire essay. That became the basis of moving from one place to another. So his essay essentially begins with, I'm a sonic learner. And every city that he lived in, rather than picking things up visually, he picked things up, learnings up sonically. So for Houston, and I quote from his essay, he says that amid the rambunctious hypermasculinity of cowboys, a melody of trots and strings cantered its way to my ears, showing the duality of H-Town. So he's talking about how on one hand, Houston is known for its strength and skill through these rodeos, but also for the grace and for the melodies through music that he also picked up in the city. After that came Paris. So he talks about how he was welcomed by Parisian cobblestone streets and how their hallmark clocks invited everyone. But while its cobblestone corridors unite, its obsession with riches and conventions divides. Within an all-accepting locality lie the seeds of classism. So he began noticing how, despite being known for its beauty, the city was also reeking of classism and exclusivity. And the interest that he picked up here was, as he says, the effortlessly chic mode Parisian won my heart and in fact laid my very own boulevard, one that inspires inclusivity with each step forward. And when he moved to Dubai, he talks about how it showed him a consumerist culture like he'd never before beheld. Flashy vehicles zip past, vroom vroom, engines and energies revving up, vroom vroom, for a thrill and adventure. Consumerism, luxury and excess is a staple of the city's shop like there's no tomorrow vibe. So he's talking about how it's a cosmopolitan haven, like it's all about luxury and consumerism. But then he also talks about how through the cacophony of screaming salesmen and speeding supercars, he heard a rhythmic reality woven with greener threads, talking about an ideal, sustainable future, something that he weaved into his philosophy. And then he says how, with an ear to the ground, in tune with my surroundings, I absorb learnings from each metropolis. Within Houston's dazzling display of power reverberated grace, Paris's exclusivity stirred a yearning for inclusivity, Dubai's glitz and glamour planted the idea of legacy through sustainability. The colorful threads of lessons and memories I cherish from each location have shaped me into who I am today, manifesting my personal philosophy, were lautus, Latin for strength, which is virtuous, combined with style, lautus, for the vir, brave human. And yeah, he talks about how he understands and appreciates a city through its sounds. His brand, Lautus, is a fashion brand for people of determination, which is, in Dubai, they are people with disabilities. That's the official term for them. And he essentially wanted to combine his passion for fashion, which he found in Paris, with the need for inclusivity, again, that he noticed in Paris, combining the grace that he found in Houston with sustainability that he picked up from Dubai. So yeah, fashion for most stems from visual simulation, but my inspiration is sonic. Through my observations, I seek to empower those who have been ignored, voices that have been muffled under the din of dominance, exclusivity, and consumerism.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really fun working with him. I think this essay came together in just 2 meetings. Once we found the sonic aspect, it immediately tied everything together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember the question that got this started?
I think I asked him about his love for music and where that stemmed from. And I asked him to trace back all the steps. So he said he found it in Houston, and I asked why in Houston, and then he said how, as a kid, wherever he was, rather than visually pointing out things, he would always first pick up things sonically. That became the inspiration.
I think that is something all of us here who work with students will agree on. Sometimes it takes you a while to figure out what it is that you're good at, what it is you're mentally attuned to, but anyone who's listening to you will be able to sort of converge on a theme that encapsulates the way you describe things. And I once heard someone say a long time back that when you love something, it's so apparent from the way you speak about them or the tone of your voice.
My scholar, it was very apparent from day one, his love for music. It was just everything he talked about included his love for music. So we knew that's something he wanted to talk about. He had this very interesting background of living in all these different countries. So it was all about how we had to bring it together. And I think just prompting a scholar and just asking them questions, question after question after question, poking them until they finally arrive at that one thing really helps. There will be some difficult conversations involved, some fun banter involved, but it's all about how you arrive at that one passion that's so meaningful to the scholar.
I think this essay is such a great example of taking a traditional, like almost borderline cliche story of, oh, I moved around a lot as a kid, right?
Yeah.
there are thousands of applicants who've had similar experiences. So when a student does indeed want to write about a very common experience, the challenge and the opportunity becomes getting creative about how you're conveying that same story and what you are communicating about your worldview and how you interface with the world. And what was so remarkable about the student was that he interfaces with the world in an entirely different way than I would say the majority of us do. And that from a strategic point of view, colleges are looking for students who are completely different than anyone they've seen, right? That's exactly what they want. They want diverse freshman classes.
The scholar got into UPenn, and the admissions officer sent an official email, a personalized email welcoming him to the class of 2028. And he specifically mentioned how he loved the scholar's personal statement and overall brand, which combines fashion, entrepreneurship, and sustainability, and that they really hope that he continues on this path at Penn.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how the story didn't necessarily describe his capstone project in that much detail. You know, this was sort of the backstory of the origin of his motivation to do his project. Upon observing the inequities and inequalities across these different cities, he arrived at the decision to embark on his extracurricular profile.
You know, rather, I'd say the extracurricular profile here is just an expression of what he loves. It's not necessarily all of this culminated, rather it is one of the many ways he's chosen to express himself. Like, you know, in relationships we have love languages, and as a student, I think your love language should be something that's apparent through your extracurricular profile.
Exactly.
It's a really good balance of authenticity and strategy, I would say. This is a true, real, honest story, vulnerable, raw, but still highlighting all those qualities that colleges are looking for.
Yeah, he was really afraid to say that I thought Paris was really classist and, you know, inclusivity did not exist there. And we told him to be bold and say it out loud.
Speak your truth.
Yeah.
It's usually the things you think you shouldn't say is what
makes
a very good essay.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I really like about this essay is, after having read it, I feel like I gained something. Now I'm going to walk out of this room and I'm going to listen a little bit more keenly to everything around me.
And I feel like I know the student as well. That's the other thing. I really, really understand that person for a human being. And that's exactly the point of the essay. Thank you so much, Megha, for that incredibly insightful essay. Annie, why don't you tell us about one of your favorite essays?
There's so many. Okay. But I would like to talk about this person I met when they were unsure about what they were doing and where they were going. And I remember how I met this person. I'll refer to them as this person. It was a Zoom call. It was the time of the pandemic, and I was floored. I'd never been floored in this manner by a teenager before, because of the power in every single idea that came out of their mouth, you know. We were discussing a debate that they had just won, and that was followed by a very in-depth discussion about the US dollar hegemony. And then I was being introduced to them for the first time. So as introductions go, most people, you know, if you ask me, tell me about you, I'd probably be able to say 2 or 3 things in a go. But I mean, without even having to say 2 or 3 things, with the little Zoom box that I saw them through, I could see like at least 10 things in their background that told me so much about them. There was artwork, there was guitar, there were books, there were little miniatures on their table, and I could already tell that this person's identity, if I have to encapsulate in an essay, is going to be a challenge. And it's very interesting, this person's essay, Common App essay, falls into the challenge essay trope. And truest to the word, it was quite a challenge. We wrote several iterations of their CAE because we weren't sure whether to talk about their project or their school activities or their hobbies and interests. To give you some context, this person was really into debate, into theater, journalism, writing, politics, activism, economics. I'm sure I've forgotten 10 more things in the process, art, music. And we tried brainstorming and writing individual essays or combination essays for each of these, and none of this seemed to work. Then we realized we've been going about it all wrong. A CAE or any essay is supposed to give you a window into a person's essence, right? You can like a potato as much as you like jet skiing. But the whole point
For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's true. We've seen a really successful essay on potatoes.
Oh yeah.
And on jet skiing. The whole point is that in reading such work, you should feel like you know the person, right? So I went back to the first time I met this student, and I remember thinking, for a 17-year-old, they have a very deep sense of empathy. And, well, surprise, all of their activities were in some form a way for this person to express their empathy for something or the other, right? Go back to all their interests again: debate, art, theater, music, politics, journalism, writing. All of these engages your core value of empathy in some form or the other. So we made a list, and when we began writing, an essay emerged. Yeah, they start by playing a character, a very bigoted, very prejudiced, very stereotypically red-blooded character who hates anyone who's non-American. And it was a very controversial way to begin because it used up at least 15% of the essay space. It's so limited, so you have to be careful. But another thing about the student is that while they're very quiet and shy and introverted, when you leave them alone, when you put them on a street or on a stage or in a classroom, they become the biggest advocate, which has often led to this person being misunderstood for being very bold and very loud. Another identity feature that we weren't sure about highlighting, because they weren't sure about highlighting, was the fact that they were queer. But they didn't want to write an essay just on that because they felt that there's, again, so much more. So what do you do when you just have 650 words and so much about yourself that you want to encapsulate? We went back to the empathy, which took us to the role-playing exercises that she would do with her theater club. And that's where we started. She role-played as this red-blooded, bigoted, really prejudiced and stereotyped character, and then switches over to talking about how anytime her school put up a production, she would have to get into character. And we introduce empathy from the beginning, because the point of the essay isn't to show that she's empathetic, it's to show what her empathy has taught her in all her experiences. So yeah, there's 4 questions, that she answers in character. When were you born and where? Are you a good person? Is there justice? And what are your politics? All of these questions are answered from the perspective of Juror 10, this character that I've just described. They talk about how they got into character months in advance. So they would dress up in their characters' costumes in class and sit. They wouldn't respond to their own name. They would only respond to being called their character's name. So all their teachers would have to be told that, hey, you cannot call them by their name. You have to call them by Jhansi Ki Rani or Juliet, or whatever they were playing.
Love the dedication.
Yeah, it's proper commitment. They write, as a Roman fortune teller, prophetic visions of Antony's empire transformed my school hallways. Or perhaps it was the smoke from the incense my character carried around. And then what starts as a light-hearted thing moves into a very serious question. Now, this essay was also kind of complicated to write, not just because of the number of activities, but because it had a lot of serious episodes. And we had to balance that seriousness with a little bit of mirth and light-hearted conversation, maybe a few jokes here and there. So we go from a bigoted character to some funny scenes from a classroom. And then a serious question. So what do you do when the character's principles are entirely different from your own? You listen. And from there we segue into their work and their experiences as a journalist and a writer. Psychology, which was another subject that they were really, really interested in learning. They write lines like, you dig into their past, unraveling the roots of their beliefs, their rage, their fear, their ambition. Again, very emotionally charged, and that goes on throughout the essay. As editor-in-chief at Blank, I learned to preserve other writers' voices, So they talk about how on stage they empathized with their character without necessarily having to agree with them, but to understand where they came from and how this translated off stage into their editing work, their journalism work, the interviews that they conducted as part of their capstone. But we don't mention the capstone here because, once again, the capstone, like all the other activities, are just an expression of who this person is, which is a very strong advocate for equality and justice. Justice more than equality, because I think justice is more emotional. I think, again, this is a very emotionally charged person in the best possible ways, right? Equality in rights, equality in being, equality in your social status and everything. But justice is more moral, it's more emotional. It's for your own sense of equilibrium within a society to feel like you're safe.
It's also subjective.
Yeah, and so much more complicated than
Exactly.
that. So that is something that they really were all about. So again, they move from that. They talk about how having a disagreement with a patriarchal professor and how to navigate the conversation without judging them, how to speak to people without judging them for being different is something that came through. Then they go into the reflections that they have finally come about as part of their experiences. So they write, true strength comes from our plurality of thought and the collective diversity of opinions. My perspective grows when I don't impose it. In learning to empathize with others, I understand myself, shifting, moving, changing constantly. Theatre and journalism showed me how art, across divisions of time, place, and culture, isn't a mirror to reality, but the hammer with which to shape it. Art screams what is otherwise whispered. It bellows, I'm here and I will do something. They move from that sentiment and build on and bring it back to themselves and talk about how the intersection of their political beliefs and artistic endeavors was no longer limited to doing a few activities like street plays or drama or debate and writing. It became very ingrained into their day-to-day activities, So for instance, because their parents had a very traditional idea of music, they start blaring hip-hop through the day. And in doing so, they also look into the culture and counterculture of hip-hop and realize how it has, as a genre, it has been a medium of dissent. The hip-hop, Kendrick Lamar and Faris Shafi I blared to challenge my parents' idea of good music introduced me to its rich history as a medium of dissent against systems of oppression. For years, protest chants have risen in India, reflecting not only the disappointment at the system, but also the yearning for a better tomorrow. They're deeply empathetic, they're deeply positive, they're optimistic, they're idealistic, and that is why that section ends with, at its core, the slogans echo what we all feel: fear, anger, empathy, and hope. And this essay then ends with the same 4 questions that were asked of the character, now asked of her. Where were you born and when? 1 December 2005, New Delhi. Do you think you're a good person? I strive to be. I don't know if goodness is measured through intent or impact, but I think about both deeply. Is there justice? And what are your politics? And it is in this final question they bring all of this together and they say, I'm an outspoken brown queer feminist. My politics are loud and angry at the inequality and apathy in the world. My politics are also quiet and empathetic. I strive to embody the compassion I wish the system had. My politics are learning and unlearning about the world, because what's broken can always be rebuilt to be better.
That's beautiful.
Wow. There's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
My initial observation of the entire piece was that it has a distinctly intellectual quality to the level and sophistication of analysis that she has.
Yeah.
I mean, the diverse experiences she's had, she's in theater, she's doing debate, all these activities, so do hundreds of other kids. And yet, the insight she derives from them, the empathy that she develops, builds, strengthens, is
It's so
super
deep.
unique. Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
deep, it's unique, it's also nuanced. It's not very
Black or white.
Yeah, it's not black or white, it's not straight edged.
Mhm.
It has its own ins and outs,
Yeah.
ups and downs.
And I really liked how she was super open to like understanding the other side. I think in today's
Yeah.
world, like there's so much polarization, and she embraces the fact that, you know, I may not understand you, but I can empathize with you. I can put myself in your shoes for a time and seek to understand.
Yeah.
And that's precisely the comfort with complexity that colleges are also looking for. They want students who are open to perspectives that completely oppose their own, right? And I love how she is very open to saying, yes, you know, I haven't completely arrived at a decision yet. I don't know if intent is more important or impact is more important, but I try to think deeply about all of these and not dismiss any out of hand right away.
I really also like how she's not afraid to be vulnerable, which is something we emphasize so much. Don't present a picture perfect version of you. Be bold enough, be vulnerable enough to tell the audience, to tell the readers that, yeah, I am angry and rebellious at times, but I'm also quiet and empathetic and willing to listen and understand your point of view.
I think very, like, stylistically speaking, we see so many students with similar interests. A lot of our politics students, English Lit, economics students, they have similar interests, you know, they run in the same circles. But I think what the student was able to do really well was tap into their raw emotion and present that in a memorable format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're writing within a trope, that's the key to success. Be memorable.
It's so
That's
bold.
it.
It's so bold.
It's a big
That
risk.
was it. Aha. Like that aha moment we're always talking about. Like you should put that. Let's start there.
I love me a full circle ending.
Yeah.
I love full circles.
That is your special.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think taking such a huge risk right at the opening, where you could fully imagine losing an admissions officer right then and
Absolutely.
there, right? Them checking out and being like, this kid is like not acceptable, not fitting our college value system at all, right? It really upends expectations, and it certainly has someone hooked, you know, if for the wrong reasons initially, and then of course having it turned on its head later is a very satisfying like catharsis from the reader's perspective.
Also, like, everyone loves a plot twist.
We love a
Yeah.
plot twist.
So it's, as a reader, you're just like, you tricked me.
Yeah. A conceit,
Yeah.
as we always say. I know.
So they finally accepted an offer at Dartmouth, Michigan, Duke were some of their other top choices.
Mhm.
And they're now studying politics over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly it worked, and the risk paid off.
Yeah.
So we have a Dartmouth, we have a Penn. So what we had the privilege of seeing today were two entirely different essays, two students who took divergent approaches to the same exercise as part of the admissions process. And our biggest learning here is that your essay can practically be about anything under the sun. As we've said many times before, there is no one essay that you're supposed to write or that you are even allowed to write. I think we have a lot of students say, am I allowed to write about that? Like, is that okay to write about? Right? Something as controversial as, you know, accusing a city of being a classist, right? Or similarly here, right? Like taking stances that are unconventional, unexpected, and we learned that you certainly can, and in fact, it is welcome to venture out into displaying different sides of your identity.
Also taking a cliche trope and making it unique, making it personal and your own. A lot of times kids and even parents are like, isn't that a bit overdone? Yeah, but it's, it's what matters is how you make it personal to yourself, to your profile. And same with yours. I think it's taking a little bit of a risk and then pulling it back, and again making it warm, making it vulnerable, a little bit almost sweeter towards the end. Again, no one way to approach writing this essay. There's so many different ways, and there's so many different styles that you can write it in.
Just do you, and tell your story and speak your truth. That's all you really can do, and the right person will read it and it will strike a chord with them. You might alienate other people, right? But the right person at the right university will say that is the kid who belongs on our campus and our community.
If there had to be an exact science, then I would say it's this. Either you write about an extraordinary experience, but extraordinary for you, or you take an ordinary experience and show us what was extraordinary about it.
Absolutely. Wise words with Annie and Megha, veterans of the college essay process. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe for even more episodes in the series, because many more to come. Like this video, share it with any of your friends who will be writing college essays soon, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.